If you got really excited on Monday when it was announced that Connor Stalions, the former Michigan staffer, swept up in the sign stealing allegations, was going to participate in a Netflix documentary, and you think that that's going to blow the cover off the entire thing, I'm going to need you to pump your brakes, because that's not what's going to happen. If you think for 1 second that Connor Stalions is going to sit down with Netflix and just become an open book, I got some oceanfront property in Arizona to sell you, because it ain't going to happen. There are 2, maybe 3 major reasons for why. If you think that this is going to be the documentary that exposes everything, that leads to Michigan's national championship being taken away, major sanctions being levied to the program, it's just not going to happen that way. First of all, it's Netflix. Do you remember when it was announced? And the Connor Stalions story is going to be part of their Untold series, and it's one of 3 new documentaries that Netflix is going to have out here in it's next month. It's in August. The first is The Murder of Steve McNair, which is probably going to be pretty interesting. The other is kind of a profile on Hope Solo and her role in USA Soccer and off the field issues, and then Connor Stalions. But do you remember when the last kind of installment came out, and it was going to be about the late 2000s Florida teams under Urban Meyer, which everybody got super excited because for a long time, the long running joke had been there needs to be a documentary made about those teams because they featured players like Tim Tebow, who's probably the most open and unabashed Christian to ever play the sport, Aaron Hernandez, who's a murderer, Riley Cooper, who lost his NFL career for shouting the N-word at a concert. Cam Newton was on those teams before he stole some laptops, got kicked off the team, and won the Heisman Trophy. 35 dudes got arrested. Urban Meyer quit at one point, came back, quit again. Like that made that subject matter made for a great documentary. That's not what Netflix put out. Nobody watched Swamp Kings and was like, this is spectacular. This is fantastic. This is awesome. Holy cow, I've been waiting a decade for this. It's not what happened. People went, yeah, I know all this already. Like, what the hell are we doing? That is what's going to happen with Connor Stalions. Because if you think for a second that he's going to sit down and become an open book, it's purported, like, this is what Netflix says about it. Connor Stalions shares his side of Michigan's alleged sign stealing scheme that turned him into a viral villain. Does that sound to you like somebody who's going to sit down and go, yeah, I wrote a 600-page manifesto about how I would run the program if I was in charge. And yes, I developed an elaborate sign stealing operation that included many different people going to Big Ten games, filming the sidelines of our upcoming opponents, then diagnosing all of the hand signals to coincide with what happened on the field so I could then give it to our coaches and I could stand on the sidelines next to them and tell them exactly verbatim what play was coming next. Do you really think he's going to sit down and do that? He's not. This is a PR reclamation project. This is your apology tour. He might admit to, like, yeah, I did some things that I probably shouldn't have. I sold some knockoff vacuum cleaners out of my house or whatever the case may be. But the idea that this gigantic conspiracy that is plagued college football for years now, and it coincided with Michigan's rise to dominance and prominence, is going to be undone by the guy who ran the operation is horribly unlikely. He didn't participate with NCAA investigations. He didn't do virtually anything to save his job at Michigan, because when you recognize, like, I got us in a world of trouble and I got to kind of fall on that sword because he loves the program so much, 500, 600-page manifesto will do that for you. The idea that he's going to sit down and just spill his guts I don't know that there is a check big enough for Connor Stalions from Netflix to do that. I just don't see the idea of him sitting there going, like, all right, what do you want to know? Ask detailed questions because I'm ready to give detailed answers. It's just not likely. But that's what the expectation is, right? When you hear the documentary is going to be about Connor Stalions and he shares his side of the story. Well, his side of the story, very rarely, very, very rarely, when it comes to people of this level or stories of this level, does somebody sit down and go, here's what I did wrong. Here's what I got wrong. Here's why I'm the bad guy in this story. Very, very rarely does it happen. I like documentaries. I really like documentaries to the point of like there was a time where you get hyper fixated on like that's the only thing I want to watch. So when you sit down and you watch, like, for instance, I don't know if it was last year, maybe 2022, that there was a documentary about Casey Anthony that came out. And I don't want to dive into all that, but Casey Anthony, you hear there's a Casey Anthony documentary, you're like, hell yeah, we're going to get to the bottom of this. You don't, because the bad guy doesn't tell you that they're the bad guy. The villain doesn't say, well, you know what, now that I thought about it, maybe I'm the bad guy in this situation. And here's why. It doesn't happen that way. That's just not how people are wired. So to expect Connor Stalions to do that in this documentary it's ridiculous for that to be your expectation. And I know that sucks because I know, like many other people, I want to get to the bottom. Like, why were you on Central Michigan sidelines? Who got you onto Central Michigan sidelines? Who knew? When did they know? How much did you get paid? Those are all details that I want. But they're not going to come from Connor Stalions. And the idea that Netflix has wholly researched this topic and spoken to the people that can provide those answers and then confront Connor Stalions with that information. So if he says, I didn't, nobody at the football office paid me, if Netflix can, have a paper trail or whatever, they're not gonna, because for Connor Stalions to agree to do this project, he's going to want some assurances that, like, hey, I'm not outing myself here, right? Like, I don't come off as the bad guy. I don't appear like, and so when he's going to relish the opportunity to tell his story isn't going to be, I did whatever it took for my football team to be good, and now in retrospect, I screwed it up. I did things that were unethical, out of character, lacked integrity, whatever the case, whatever words you want to use. He's not going to say that. So I understand the excitement. I understand the idea of when you read that, when you see, like, holy cow, they landed Connor Stalions. Probably not going to ask the questions you want them to ask. And then two, he's not going to answer the questions that you want to ask. So the whole thing to me is a nothing burger. Am I going to watch it? Yeah. But the idea, like, I'm going to watch it with the expectation of this kind of smarmy, slimy dude who did smarmy, slimy stuff is going to be smarmy and slimy in this documentary. The idea that he's going to confront reality and say, yeah, we cheated. We did what you're not supposed to do. The FBI knew it. The Big Ten knew it. Michigan knows it. Jim Harbaugh knows it. Ward Manuel, the athletic director, the president of Michigan, they know it. Everybody knows it, but yeah, I guess you're right. You caught me. It's not going to happen. So pump the brakes on your excitement and expectation, because I just don't think you have that to look forward to. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. I appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you are listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode here of the Daily Huddle.